Hi everybody, Josselyn here. Very excited to be with you and also excited to get in a little workout without my 2-year-old toddler climbing all over me like he did this morning. So yay. This is a small practice that I designed for a workshop that I held that was centered around helping clients develop their own home practice. So what I really want to invite you to do in this simple, not easy, but simple mat Pilates practice is to play and to make modifications based on what feels good to your body. So we have kind of three basic rules for modification. One is to increase or decrease your range of motion, so small to big. Big is usually harder, but not always. So that's modification number one. Modification number two is to increase or decrease your lever load. So small lever, long lever. Generally, long lever is a little bit harder because it places more load on your spine and requires the body to organize itself to accommodate that long lever. And then the last one is increase or decrease your base of support. So if we are wider, like if we're standing and our feet are a little bit wider apart, tends to be a little easier to balance than if our feet are really close together. So we're going to be mostly on all fours, lying on our back, lying on our sides. So we're not going to have too many opportunities to increase or decrease our base of support, but it is something to consider in your home practice in general if you want to increase or decrease the difficulty. Okay, so with all that said, let's move. So I also have a blanket. You can just simply use a towel, or if you have a comfy blanket at home that you like. It's not necessary. There's one little series in the practice that we'll use underneath our upper back and underneath our ribs to kind of add more mobilization. But if it's just too much trouble, then don't worry about it. I'm going to start seated. Sitting on my knees is comfortable for my body. If it's not comfortable for your body, you can sit in a cross-legged position, sit in a chair. You can even lie down on your back. But we're just going to breathe a little bit. And sometimes when I'm feeling a little tired or fatigued, if I breathe laying down, it sort of lulls me deeper into that tired state. So I'm going to be upright against gravity, so I'm a little more awake and alive. So right away, I'm going to bring my hands to the sides of my ribs. And I'm just going to start to connect to an east-west breath. I'm not trying to fix anything. I'm not trying to engage or unengage, if that's a word, anything. I'm just gently directing my breath into the sides and a little bit into the back of my rib cage. In through the nose. Out through the mouth. Locating the parts where it feels like maybe not as much breath is being sent into that area. So for me, it's in my left rib cage, particularly in the back of my rib cage. I tend to get a little compressed there. So just notice where your breath is going. And can you fill up the cylinder of your torso a little more evenly and a little more fully? From there, making your way down to all fours. This is where the little blanket or towel can come in handy if you have sensitivity in your knees like I do. And we're just going to start with some spinal mobilization. I'm going to take an exhale. I'm going to round my head and tailbone. Inhale, finding an arch, creating more length in my spine. Exhale, rounding the head and tail. Inhale, finding an arch. Just two more. Exhale, round. Using that nice full breath that we just experienced. One more exhale. Inhale, find neutral, and then right away start a tail and head wag to the same side. using my eyes. So my eyes are leading, they're following my spine. Leading and following, I guess. Getting a little gentle oblique work on one side and a little stretch on the other side. Maybe noticing which side feels a little crunchier, and if you want to do a few just on one side, if you feel like you need a little bit more, please do. Finishing up my last set. And then coming back to neutral, I'm going to release my left arm out to the side of the room. I'm going to push down with my right, do a rotation up, and then thread the needle, bending my right elbow and sending my left fingertips long. Just 2 more. Easy. One of the first things we're doing, so be gentle with yourself. Coming down, second side, crack, pop, snap. Up and down. You're starting to notice the range. Finding rotation in the spine, some mobility through the ribs, and coming back to center. And then just taking a moment to come off your wrists and give yourself a little release. Okay, right back onto all fours. So now we just move the spine. So we're going to go ahead and stabilize the spine now. I'm going to take a nice big inhale, letting the belly fall. Exhale, abdominals in and up, letting the ribs go along for the ride. So oftentimes, when we do abdominal breathing on all fours, finding that activation of the deepest layer of abdominals, our spine likes to do a sneaky little rounding position. So what we're going to try to do is be mindful that we're engaging our abdominals and our core muscles to support this shape rather than to change it. One more time, inhaling and exhaling, snuggling the abdominal wall in nice and firm. Holding that position, so you're going to breathe, so the ribs will let go a little bit, but you're going to think about really pulling the navel up, absorbing the ribs into the body, and shooting the sternum long. I'm going to start to rock my sitting bones back towards my heels, and then forward. Introducing the concept of hip glide, spinal and pelvic stability. Imagining I have a little hot cup of coffee, or a glass of wine, some beverage that you like, balanced right on my sacrum, and I'm not going to spill the beverage. So what we're watching for here is the point where I go back that my spine wants to round, and just exploring the movement potential before that happens. I'm going to take my knees apart, big toes together, so slight external rotation, and most of us will be able to go back a little further with the thigh bones and external rotation. It's just our anatomy. It's the way we're built. Still imagining some delicious beverage on your sacrum, staying very still. One more. And then bringing the knees together, feet apart. You won't be able to go as far back in this position. Again, it's just the way we're designed. So this position helps to drive the head of the femur, the top of that big long leg bone, deeper into the pelvis, which is really useful for low back issues, hip mobility issues. Good. And then I'm going to come back to neutral with the legs and just see if my initial range of motion has increased or decreased, or if it feels any different. So I feel like I can go back a little further. Not sure if that's actually true, but it definitely feels like there's a little more space in my body. Okay. And then just taking a quick child's pose. You can move the wrists a little bit. And then rolling back up. I'm going to go ahead and fold the blanket so it's a little bit thicker, and then I'm actually going to send it out of the way. So I'm going to take it down onto the ground for a moment, and then it'll come right back to greet us in just a moment. Making my way down onto my back, My feet are about hip distance apart, just getting settled. And I'm going to take a moment. I'm going to allow my sacrum to get very heavy. I'm going to allow the back of my rib cage to get very heavy. I'm going to imagine now that little beverage is about 3 inches below my belly button, and I'm not going to spill it. I'm going to exhale, lightly engage the abdominals, float the right leg up into a tabletop-ish position and lower down. So I'm reinforcing that idea of hip glide that we just did on all fours, but in a different relationship to gravity now. So the lever is different on the spine. I have to work a little bit harder through the muscles of my torso to help stabilize. Feeling that my femur bone is dropping and gliding in the hip joint. One more each side. Last one, drawing my left leg up to engage my abdominals a little bit deeper because I'm adding lever, and then lift my other leg up and then just start a tap. So this is where those rules of modification, at least 2 of them, come in very handy. So right now my lever is quite small. If I wanted to make my lever load bigger, I would reach my leg further away, which makes it quite a bit harder. And you can also see that I'm not touching the mat. So I'm being mindful of my range of motion in relationship to what my abdominals can tolerate, what my spine can tolerate in this position. And as I start to connect more through the torso, we're going to do 3 more each side. My range of motion might get a little bit larger because I'm connecting a little bit more and my body's learning how to stabilize a little bit more. Letting the feet rest, reaching the arms straight up to the ceiling. I'm going to let the shoulder blades be very heavy on the mat. Take a big inhale. And then exhale, drawing the ribs down as the arms go back. Inhaling up. Noticing when I draw my ribs down, does my pelvis automatically want to tuck under? Can I keep the front of the pelvis long and draw my ribs down, not closing them, not knitting together, just literally drawing them down and heavy, so I'm still keeping length in the front of my body. Feeling as if I can move my arms from the middle of my back and one more. From there, I'm going to roll onto my side and I'm going to grab my blanket and I'm going to make a pillow, and I'm not going to fall asleep. I'm going to stretch my top arm forward and I'm going to start to rotate my chest open to the ceiling and then close the book. So we already rotated the spine on all fours. This is a little more drippy, and we also get a little bigger opening through our chest muscles. Those kind of pesky pectoral muscles that tend to get a little tight, a little cranky. Just giving them a nice opportunity to open, and then just making my way over to the other side. I'm focusing a little bit here on keeping length in my spine, so I'm not just sort of flopping into a fetal position, but keeping some direction of my head and tail moving away from each other. And closing the book. Primarily generating this movement from my ribs instead of just my arm flopping back. So I'm staying integrated and connected in the relationship between my arm and my torso. And one more. Good. I'm going to push my way up to sit. I'm going to move my blanket in a little bit. And then this is what is the optional portion, but it feels really good on the spine. So if you have the time to organize your props, I would encourage. You're going to take the neat end of the blanket, and then you're going to let your shoulder blades just rest on, so that your neck and your head fall back, and you're interlacing your hands behind your head. So we're getting a little extension in the spine here. My elbows are still at an angle, slightly up to the ceiling, so my shoulders are integrated, pelvis is in neutral. I'm gonna exhale and I'm gonna curl. Pressing that mid back into the blanket, and then inhale and extend over the blanket or towel. So I'm moving from an extended thoracic spine through neutral into a tiny bit of flexion. This is one of those instances, if you have a bit of like upper back spinal condition, a little osteoporosis, or just flexion doesn't feel great, or you feel like you don't need it, you can just come up to neutral and hover. Still nice work in the abdominals, long, but engaged. So now we're gonna add a little extra load. I'm gonna extend one leg long as I curl and then release back down. So I'm increasing my range of motion. I'm increasing my lever load, and I'm decreasing my base of support because now I only have one foot to stand on. So challenging my pelvic stability. Trying to prevent any tipping of the pelvis side to side. So both of my hip points are facing up to the ceiling like two little headlights. One more each side. And down. And last one. Good. Adding a bit of rotation now. So I'm going to rotate to the left and draw my left leg into tabletop. And then release back down. Exhale and rotate. And down. Thinking about drawing my armpit to my opposite thigh, not my thigh to my opposite armpit. There is a difference. If you're like, well, what's the difference? Then try it. See what it feels like just to draw your thigh across. Could be interesting, but maybe not as much fun for your abdominals. One more each side. Letting the ribs rotate down, keeping the head heavy into the hands. Elbows are wide but at an angle, so the neck is relaxed. And then stretching the legs out long, letting your chest open, sending the arms out. And then folding, rolling to one side, and moving the blanket out. Again, a little bit of prop choreography. Coming back down onto your back. Interlace again your hands behind your head, sharpen your elbows a little bit up to the ceiling, going for a lower spine rotation. So you're going to go ahead and take the knees over to one side, keeping the shoulder blades grounded, and back up. And rotate, and back up. So this little mini mat workout has quite a bit of rotation. And I just find for myself and also working with my clients that it's a range of motion that often gets a little lost in our everyday lives, and also often gets a little lost in a Pilates practice. Keeping the shoulders down, letting the spine rotate, letting the abdominals, particularly the side abdominals, those obliques, activate. We're using rotation kind of like using vitamins in your diet. We're filling in the movement nutrition deficiencies, I guess you could say. And one more. From there, bringing the knees in a little closer, separating the feet out hip distance apart, and then choices, lots of choices for your arms here. You can come into a globe post if that feels okay. You can press your arms straight down. You can take your palms up to the ceiling. I'm going to just go a little more classical, pressing my arms down, getting a little activation in the backs of my arms. And we're going to go for a bridge. I'm going to start to curl the pelvis up. And rolling back down. I'm being very mindful here of my range of motion. So my primary focus for my body is to focus on hip extension here, getting the back of the hip, the upper hamstring, the lower glute to fire up a little bit. So I can lengthen through my hip flexors, keep my abdominals activated, and feel length in my spine. There's nothing wrong with coming up higher. For my body, that's going to look like that, which is a really nice arch in my back. And for me, that's not really something I have to work on. So play, experiment, and see what feels like something that you need. One more time, I'm going to come up, reaching my knees forward, the crown of the head back, feeling my heels gently pull in towards my pelvis. I'm going to reach my arms up to the ceiling. Exhale, take my arms back. Inhaling up. Exhaling back. I'm just challenging a bit of endurance for the backs of the legs. I started feeling a little interesting in my low back, so I just lowered my pelvis a little bit and brought my hips underneath me a little bit more. So now I feel the backs of my legs more. Feel a little more connected. One more time. And then I'm going to roll down, reaching my fingertips away, away, away. I'm going to go ahead and grab the back of my right knee, or my right thigh, and then I'm going to extend the leg up, tighten my hamstrings today, and then relax the foot down. So just a dynamic stretch or dynamic release through the back of the leg. If you want more stretch, extend the left leg long. But see if that's really the right decision for you. For me today, no way. My right hamstring feels super cranky. So I'm going to keep my knee bent, letting my low back be a little happier. Switching to the other side, I'm going to extend and bend. Reaching the heel up to the ceiling and bend. And again, it's fine if your leg doesn't straighten all the way. Whatever. We're just getting a little bit of length in the backs of the legs that we worked in the previous exercise. Good. Making my way onto my side, and I'm going to grab my blanket again because I want to be comfy. So I'm going to stretch my arm out long. I'm going to wedge the blanket right underneath my head, and I can adjust depending on what feels better to my neck. I'm going to lift up my bottom waist a little bit, press my top hand down, 6 clams, knee up and down. So here's a hip glide. We're just gliding into external rotation. Rolling my femur bone, or more specifically, rolling my greater trochanter down to my sitting bone. Last 2. One more. I'm going to extend that leg long. Feel like my toes are reaching away from the crown of the head. And I'm going to circle for 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Reverse. So this is an example of a long lever. So if it feels too long, maybe you bend your knee and circle that way. Slightly different muscle group, but a little closer to the body. Possibly more challenging, possibly less challenging. Sending both legs long now. Hug the ankles, hug the feet together. Exhale, lift both legs up and down. Don't be afraid to push down through your top arm. That gives you a little bit of leverage. Working both sides of your abdominals. They're working differently, but they're both working. Last 2. And one more. Using the strength of my arms to push up. And I'm just going to take a little side stretch over. And back up. And then I'm going to stay facing you today. Sweep around to the other side. Take my arm underneath, nestle in. Lift up my bottom waist just a little bit so I have equal contours in the waist. And then I'm going to clam. 6. Trying to keep everything very still. So similar idea to the knee folds that we did in the beginning of class. But now I'm just working the hip in a different plane of motion. But I'm still working with the idea of lumbo, low back, pelvic stability. I think I got an extra one in there, but oh well. Send the leg long. Gonna circle. 6 5, privileging length over height, because then things start getting a little muddy in there. 3, 2, 1, reverse. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Sending both legs long. I'm going to absorb my ribs into my body. They were getting a little flared, lifting up and down. This is a really valuable exercise to connect to your side abdominals. If you feel it too much in your low back, just bring your legs a little more in front of you. Ooh, that makes it harder. 2 and 1. I'm going to use the strength of my arms to push up. Take a little side bend over. Goodbye blanket. And then I'm going to make my way down onto my tummy. Okay. I'm going to stretch my legs out long behind me. Hands are just wide of my shoulders and more or less in alignment with my shoulders. I'm going to think about pressing the entire front of my pelvis into the mat. So I'm not tucking and I'm not arching, but I'm thinking about flattening, widening, and lengthening. I'm going to start to drag my hands back. I'm going to imagine a marble rolling out in front of me. I'm going to watch the marble roll. And then I'm going to watch it roll back down. So the eyes really help with stimulating easeful, correct back extension. What often happens is they either get a little too lazy, which looks something like this, or they get very excited, which looks like this. I'm not really doing my neck any favors there. What we're going to think about is, again, length and articulating from the head to the neck, to the upper back, to the mid upper back, to the low upper back, to maybe a little bit of my low back and lower down. So working at a range that feels safe for your body, which may look like this. It may look like this. It's all up to you. 2 more. Stretching the sternum forward and the toes back. Last one, I'm going to come up and hold. I'm going to firm up through my legs. I'm going to point my feet, pressing the tops of the feet to the mat. I'm going to sneak my arms back behind me, roll my shoulders back, hug my triceps into the body, and then right from where my glute and my hamstring meet, I'm going to lift my legs gently up. I'm going to fly and low back down. Stretch the fingers and toes away from the crown of the head. Abdominals are lightly on. Stretching toes, fingers, crown of the head forward and down. One more time, lengthening, lifting up and lower down. Taking the hands underneath. I'm going to leave my blanket away, but if you want to grab it again, totally up to you. Costume adjustment. Come onto all fours. We're going to reset the abdominals before we stretch back into child's pose. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I'm nicely set up in a neutral spine, neutral scapular positioning. I'm going to stretch one leg back, take the opposite fingertips forward. This is a little starting of balancing. My lever load is pretty long. My base of support, pretty narrow. Range of motion for me right now, kind of medium. You could try to go a little higher if that feels good. And lower back down. Last time, extending. Just checking to make sure I'm square in my hips, taking a little peek. Reaching, 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 and lower back down. From there, I'm going to step one foot back and the other foot back, and I'm going to go into a plank. If plank is just not your thing, you can do a kneeling plank. If kneeling plank is not your thing, you can do a kneeling hover, If a kneeling hover is not your thing, you can breathe on all fours again. I'm gonna go back to plank. I'm gonna think about getting longer. I'm gonna press back through my heels, forward through the crown of my head, drag my sternum forward, absorb the ribs into the body. Legs are nice and active. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then a well-deserved child's pose. Okay, from there, you're gonna lose my legs. Sorry. I'm gonna come on to the other side of my table, and we're just gonna do a quick little standing balance challenge. Okay, so I'm gonna stand with my feet pretty close together. Gonna feel my verticality. I'm gonna lift one leg up. Doesn't need to be super high. So just get it so it's kind of out of the way, nice and soft, and I'm gonna close my eyes. And I'm gonna try not to fall. So apologies you can't see my foot, but it's wiggling around like crazy, having a little dance. And that's the point of this. It's not to be a statue. It's to negotiate the wiggles. So I'm kind of in a constant state of falling and recovery right now. And that's what helps to strengthen my joints, make them a little smarter, not smaller, smarter. Opening the eyes, go back down. Second side, just taking a moment, finding my verticality, lifting the leg up, close the eyes. And if at home you are saying to yourself, there is just no possible way, I'm suffering intensely closing my eyes, guess what? Open them. And then maybe tomorrow you'll close your eyes. Whoop. And then maybe you'll fall over and get right back up. And that's how we learn. And down. I'm gonna lift my arms up. I'm gonna nod the chin to the chest. Start to peel the spine down. I'm gonna soften my knees. Just taking a nice little roll through center. Connecting back to my midline. And then articulating the spine back up. Shoulders roll back, crown of the head reaches up. I'm gonna grab my blanket one more time. And then I'm just gonna organize it in a way that will feel good as a headrest. So my head's gonna be just slightly lifted so my neck is a little more comfortable. I'm gonna come back down onto my back. I'm gonna take my feet wide apart. I'm gonna let my knees knock together so my legs are really supported. So we're gonna set up for constructive rest position. So I kind of, in my own practice, kind of think of this as like the Shavasana of Pilates, if that could be a thing. Maybe we should make it a thing. And the idea here is that we're resting in a slightly awake state. So we're calm, but we're awake. We're just allowing what happened in our practice to integrate and to calm the nervous system down a little bit. So a couple different arm positions, sort of like classic constructive rest position is to take the arms across the chest and just let them rest. I tend to be a little tighter, more structured in the front of my chest. So I kind of like to bring my arms into a soft goal post. I also feel like I can breathe a little bit better here, so it's up to you. And then I'm going to leave my eyes open. Again, your choice. And you can play from day to day with what you need. I'm just going to stay here for a few breaths. We're going to imagine the skull becoming heavy and wide. Imagining the lungs very heavy in the rib cage. Imagining the pelvis wide and flat. Imagine the thigh bones are heavy. Imagining the knees are light. And imagining the feet are wide and long. Take one more nice deep breath. And then rolling to one side and making your way up. We did it. So take that and run wild. Play as you will. Thanks so much. See you guys next time.